People eat all kinds of shit here through the week. I don't know what they're eating. You know, it's like jus cervelle dans son jus de sang avec artichaut. You know, I'll have 2 of those, please. It's basically blood, you know, brain floating in blood with artichokes. And I don't like artichokes. Anyway, it's fun to be here. Ken is great, and you guys, what a thrill to kind of mesh yourselves with this guy. Because when we opened up Taxi in New York, we had no clients, we had no real estate, we had really nothing. And I bumped into Bob. I don't know how that happened. And he said, well, you can come and use a boardroom. So Taxi actually started at Saatchi. And thanks, Bob. We're doing well.
Yeah.
We moved out of the boardroom, actually. We have our own offices in Soho.
I should have moved with you.
Yeah, you should have moved with me. Well, there's still room. I got to get down to Nashville. I've never been. I don't know if you've, you know, paid attention, but the world's going to end in December. We all know that. So the question is, what the fuck are you doing here? Really mean. I'd be like, H. On Friday, on June 15th, last Friday, I was really, really happy because it was our 20th anniversary. And when we started this idea project, Taxi, 20 years ago, you know, one of the things that I wanted to do with Taxi is create a creative culture. And I put all my efforts and all my thinking in setting the conditions for that creative culture to flourish with everybody. And I'm going to take you through some of the things that we thought of doing at the beginning and how they've sort of worked themselves through the 20 years. I was also telling Bob that I got an email from our CEO, one of my best friends, Rob, and he had shared an idea that somebody had come up the day before. And it was such a great idea, and I thought that was a great gift, a great 20th anniversary gift. So I sent everybody an email congratulating first the fact that we're still in business, and then also that we're still doing great work, and that I had heard this really great idea. One of the things, there's a couple of things that were really important at the beginning. I came from an agency that was really good. We did really good work, but we also did really, really bad work. But more importantly, the thing that upset me the most, and wasn't particularly this agency, is that everything was siloed. You had people doing media here, they had the creative people here, the people running the company there. We had kind of silos, but when we pitched a client, we broke those silos down. We bought, you know, you've done this before. You put in a bunch of 3 or 4 people, and you're sequestered in a room or off-site, and you work really, really hard. And God, you win the account, and we all go back to our silos. And I thought that creativity doesn't flourish when there's walls. We need to bring those walls down. Hence the name Taxi, by the way, because you can only get 4 people in a taxi. And the idea was to work with units instead of working with departments. The other thing that I thought was really important is that we hire only creative people. Oh yeah, the other thing that, first of all, what do you do? I mean, it's nice to have a culture, but I also believed, back then we were just doing traditional advertising, and what we like to do is we would like to think about where the customer is, as opposed to think about specific media. So we brought and merged design and advertising together. So we did a lot of packaging. You know, the idea is wherever the customer is, we'll kind of show up and have that narrative or conversation with them on behalf of that product or service. And we do events and experiential. I'll just show you an example. Like, so this is some of the mini work. Hold on. This is traditional advertising that we do. This is very funny in Toronto. We got a call from the cops, and they were really happy because people actually slow down. Oh. Yeah, and then when we put this on, they told us to shut that. It was right near the airport, and that was always a problem, so we had to shut that down. But we had a lot of fun with these guys. We also designed the stuff. We designed this. It's the skinny. It's not even true. It was an April Fool's joke one year, and it fooled so many people that dealers received tons and tons of orders for the skinny. But I think they should be This was last Halloween. We disguised cars that weren't unis. Even your car is dressing up as something hot. We did a lot of, we do a lot of, whatever. I don't even know what that is. And then, Yeah. So the idea was, why is it only creative people in the creative department? You know, creativity for me, the way I define it, is not the skill set of writing or copywriting or visualizing or strategizing. It's about thinking and thinking differently. And therefore, the whole company should be creative. In fact, even the receptionists should be creative. Everybody, the accountants, should be creative. Not too illegally creative, but they should be creative. People should be thinking and thinking and thinking foremost. So I believe that we could have everybody be creative. And now, when I started that, I had a lot of friends of mine who debated that. They said, you know, and I don't know if you've heard this, people who say, no, I'm not creative. No, I wish I was creative like you guys. Jesus, aunts, uncles, you're so creative. I wish I was creative. But you know, in fact, everybody's creative when you think of it. We're all born creative. And one of those things that I like to prove is I just want to, for instance, you, sir. What's your name?
Andre.
Andre, what's that? What's this?
It's a white surface star. It's a hole.
It's a hole. What do you think it is?
I would say a ball because it bounced.
It bounced. Oh, that's cool.
Dot.
A dot. You?
Moon.
A moon?
Domino.
A meringue?
Domino.
A domino, okay. Well, it's so funny. If we keep going, I think we might get a little creative, but mostly when you ask people this, 99.9% say a dot, and a ball, and the moon. Those are the three things that pop up. They never say meringue. But if you ask young kids, and this is proven research, kids who haven't even entered school, what this is, and they come up with amazing things like the nose of a seal, or they'll say my uncle's nostril. You know, they come up with the most, you know, the moon, or the Earth seen from the moon. You know, they've actually said these amazing things, and what it proves is that when we're all born creative, we all think differently. We all have this incredible imagination. What happens along the way, and a lot of people who have studied this, educators have felt that, you know, the school system sometimes compromises, normalizes, marginalizes, because it's when you start saying weird things, oftentimes peer pressure, people say you're weird, you're thinking differently, and that conforms you to go back into the middle and to do something that everybody agrees with. And you know, the school is always looking for the #1 answer, the gold lion, the silver. You know, every gold lion in another show sometimes it doesn't even make the show. You know that. I've been to shows where things that have gone Grand Prix have got merit in another show. So it's all very personal and subjective. And the idea is that you have to think about that there's more than one answer. So I believe that everybody has this possibility, but what happens is when they join taxi and they're like 22, they may not think they're creative. And so again, how can we create those little conditions for people to think and give them permission to think differently? Here's another little thing. I have a friend of mine, I live in Soho, and on the 2nd floor of a 6th floor building. On the 6th floor, Brian, his mother, Dr. Betty Edwards, famous lady, wrote this book, Drawing from the Right Side of Your Brain. And it was like, you know, the right side is the creative side, the left side is the rational side. We're always using the, that's not her, by the way, that's not Brian, but I'll get to it. But it's like, you know, and it's unlocking that creative potential in you. And so he's an artist, and, you know, he doesn't make that much money as an artist, but he makes a lot of money from people that come in all over the world. He has groups of between 15 and 20 that go into his loft, and what they do is he teaches them for 5 days. The first thing he does when you come into his class is he gives you a mirror and you draw yourself. And this is, I'm just going to show you. This is a guy, I have a couple of them that he drew himself. And then 5 days later, the same dude, and they're like dentists and bankers. They're not like, they don't go to creative school. This is what that guy drew. No, I just made it up. No, it's actually true. And I'll show you, I have a lot of other cases. But look, what Brian is trying to teach is not drawing. I mean, it's beautiful, you know, it's beautiful. But what Brian is trying to teach people to be creative, to be more specifically, is to look and really observe what they're actually looking at. We oftentimes, and you will do this, I do it still, you assume. You assume things. And when you draw often, when you don't draw, you assume things. That always people do the light bulb, like the headlight thing, you know? The little pupils are floating. You know, you got a bit of a sofa thing happening here, like a couch. And these ears are always like, you know, sticking out like Prince Charles. And so the thing is, what he's been able to do is to make them think differently. This is not a bad drawing. I mean, there's some detail here that I've got. So this person may have some talent, but you know, 5 days later, this is what that person looks like. And this one is weird because it actually looks like a client looking at my work last week. That looks creepy, but the thing is at the end, you know what I'm getting at. So what are the things that we did at Taxi to say, sort of make this thing happen? Now, creative people, you get paid to do that, so obviously you're going to step ahead, but I'm talking about account people, I'm talking about planners, I want even creative people to really think, not assume. And most people assume, so I came up with this, we call it a mantra, but it's based on that operative word doubt, and it's just a thing that we've had for 20 years. It just says doubt the conventional, create the exception. What it's trying to say is question the things that are average, that you see that are conventional. But why are you doing that? Not just to be different, but you're really trying to get to an exceptional place, exceptional business results for your client, an exceptional experience. Bob, the times you did great work when you saw those rushes or you saw the proofs. And you know that feeling? I mean, you remember that was great. And then the partners that work with you. It's an exceptional thing to do great things and to affect our world.
We call it the fuck me factor.
The fuck me factor.
Yeah. Fuck me, how do they do that?
Yeah. How do they do that? Yeah. Well, the thing is, we all want to get there, and doubt is one way of unlocking it. And doubt is an interesting word. You know, I like the word doubt. I chose it because it's vulnerable. Doubt is like insecure. It should be a negative thing, really. In fact, the first time I used it was in the first business pitch. And it was like a pretty important pitch. It was, I don't know, $10 or $15 million pitch. And I was talking, so first I was my coming out party with my thing, doubt the conventional, create the exceptional thing. And I was looking at this guy, the guy was looking at me like this. And I had to stop the meeting. By the way, if you ever get in a meeting and something goes wrong, just stop the meeting. It's the greatest thing in the world. Just stop it. Because there's no reception happening, so you must stop the conversation right now. I go, so you don't buy that? And he goes, no, I'm not giving you $10 or $15 million. And you're talking about doubt. So I had to explain. And what I meant was, you know, I said to him, and I came up with this pretty fast of me, but I remember saying, cholesterol. Is that a good word? He goes, no. I said, there's good cholesterol and there's bad cholesterol. We know that, right? Well, there's good doubt and bad doubt. Bad doubt is if you were, you know, shooting a TV commercial for about $2 or $3 million and you lean over to your client and say, you know what? Fuck, you should have done out at home. That would really free your mouth, okay? But I'm talking about doubt is at the beginning of the process, the very beginning of the process, a creative process. And what it does is it forces you to question things. And when you start questioning things, you see opportunities. So instead of saying, you know, because once you commit to a thing, you're going to do, I don't know what you do here, I want to talk about that later, but you design TV shows or whatever. When you commit to something and then you're going down that production road, if you have 3 options, that's great. But what happens if you had 1 million options? And then you start whittling down. You probably get to a much more special and exceptional space. And that's all it's doing, is putting the pause button on and saying, why are we doing this? What are we really trying to achieve? You know, you'll see this in your career. And Bob can attest to this. Clients will ask you a question, but that's not the question they're asking. That's not the question. They ask for something or an objective, but what's the real question? I love Einstein's quote when he says, if I had 20 days to solve a problem, I would take 19 to figure out what the real question is. Take 19 of those days just to figure out the real question, the answer will come really quick. But figuring out the question is the whole trick to getting us to a special place. You ask great questions, you'll get great creative answers. You ask banal questions, most probably you'll get something that we've seen before. So we're trying to get to the greatest question. You know, I showed some mini work, and you know, when I talk about creativity, I want to put this in perspective. Creativity happens every day. It doesn't happen in just solving our client's business. When we pitched the Mini Cooper to launch in Canada, all the other agencies spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars pitching creating spec ad. They did all this amazing stuff. I don't like doing that. We do that once in a while, but I don't like to do creative for free. I think this is crazy system. But I also like to win. So I have to figure out how to do this. Here's a classic example of figuring out the right question. Went into the meeting, this very severe-looking guys. They're all in white shirts and ties. They're German guys. The president of BMW is. His father was, I think, the founder of BMW, and was like a very important guy at this point in his career. He's running Canada, and he looks at me in front of my people and his people, and he says, "You don't respect us. You don't do creative. All the other guys did creative." And it's pretty tough. You know, I don't think you're going to win this account when the guy who's like the main dude says you don't respect. But I said, your problem is that you think you need advertising. I said, the Mini Cooper was named the car of the millennium. How many millenniums had cars? It's the damn Mini Cooper. It's like an amazing car. It's not like a Ford Escort or some little crappy car like this. It's the Mini Cooper. I said, here, don't do any advertising this year. Launch it. I said, how many cars do you want to sell? Fine. You're lowballing. Perfect. Go ahead and launch no advertising. In year 2, you're okay. You're good to go. But I said, year 3 and year 4, when the novelty runs off, what do you stand for? That's the question we're going to answer today. Because if you don't answer that question, you just have a little fad car like the Beetle. And we won the account, and the guy told me after, he says, wow, you know, you socked it right back to us, and you know, and that you have to commit yourself when you go into these meetings. So, a year and a half ago, sold the agency, made a lot of money. We have a lot of fun, and also for the agency, we have an amazing we've got like access to 17,000 people in the Y&R group and 153,000 in the WPP group. And in that group of people are some smart people, and I really want to have more depth in our organization. We're about 500 people now. And so I think to really win in this global competitive world, I want smarter people per square foot. If I put smarter people per square foot in my company, I would. And I just thought, you know, just keeping the competitiveness up. I also want to continue to expand. We're in Amsterdam and New York and a couple of places in Canada. We're opening up in Chicago in September, and we're going to probably go down to South America beginning next year. And so, but I'm also sold a company. I didn't sell the culture. If you sell the culture, then I'm out of there. And I think a lot of the people that were working at Taxi are out of there. And the culture of doubt is so important, we decided to make a book and a whole bunch of other things. And this is a book, Doubt, Unconventional Wisdom from the World's Greatest Shit Disturber. And it's a really interesting book, and it just, you know, it was just made for ourselves, but we did sell it, and so I think there's 1 or 2 books left on Amazon, and it was sold at the MoMA bookstore. But it's just a collection of really interesting people who are creative, who have solved some amazing things in life and added value to our world. And they've added value to the world because they've doubted the convention. And these stories are not about advertising, but they're about really interesting people doing interesting things. And they were assembled by us. You know, I didn't write this book. People all say, hey, I love your book. I was like, not my book, it's our book. It's our culture. And so they're in this book. We also, when we launched it, we did this little video just to bring that little character, Doubt, alive. Because doubt is a thing. It's not a thing, really, but we wanted to make it a thing. So this is a little...
Allow me to introduce myself. I am the 6th member of the Beatles and personal muse to Radiohead. I showed Andy Kaufman, you don't need to be funny to be funny. I asked Jackson Pollock to try painting without letting the brushes touch the canvas, and told Franz Kafka to stop muttering and start writing all that stuff down, even though a lot of it was depressing. I created the Renaissance. Oh, and cellular telephones. I made Velcro stick. I gave flight to the space program, and I put the impressively firm hold in your hair gel. I took the top down, I squared the golf club, I made the TV, then HD, and then 3D. Made everybody get down with hip-hop. I was the I in iMac, and Pod, and Pad. I was indoor plumbing, woodstock, unicycles, astroturf, skateboarding, surfboarding, longboarding. Oh, and sorry about the waterboarding. I created The Simpsons, the Spice Girls, and that little guy from Austin Powers. Yeah, I was the driving force behind the Autobahn. You know, I'm pretty much a part of everything that mattered in this world, good, bad, relevant, or otherwise. I don't just have my stamp on history. I f***ing invented it. Now, piss off.
Yeah, that's him. And you know, that little character has always been, he's a good guy, you know. When you let him into your life, when you let that little guy into your life, it's a better life because he will always question even yourself. You know, you think you've got the solution. You go, that's it. That's what I'm gonna do. We're gonna. And he'll come in and he'll say, really, is that the best he can do? And it keeps pushing you to do better things. But unless you let doubt into our lives, and this is our sort of little theory, is that we'll continue to just do boring things that have been done before, and those that are easy to sell, easy to make, easy to produce. And but life isn't as special as that without it. And I'll give you a couple of examples of some of the stories that are really interesting. That we so disciples of doubt. I got to tell you, these guys, we call them disciples of doubt. Okay. And basically, there's two characteristics that I've noticed all these stories. I'm going to take you through two stories, and then we'll talk about some other things. But the two characteristics that people who have made great things, they're skeptics. First and foremost, they're skeptics. I don't believe this. I think we can do something else. Steve Jobs was a skeptic. But he was also an optimist. He just wouldn't take no. He just kept pushing and forcing the situation. Because when you have a good idea, and I'm sure if you've worked a little bit, it happens that if it's a too new idea, it's a little hard to sell into the system. So what you need, or what these people have in common with each other, is they're skeptics, but they're optimists. It's okay. Thomas Edison, they've tried 1,500 times to invent the light bulb. Every time they missed, he says, we're getting closer. You know, he's like, he had this sort of optimism that, you know, I'm not going to stop, I'm not going to quit. And I think that's interesting. Here's an example. In Zimbabwe, you don't have high rises because they're too expensive to heat and cool and stuff like that. Excuse me, I'm so thirsty I drank all that Coke. So the architect, Mick Pierce, was, there's a bug in your computer, I think. No. He was inspired by termites because termites had figured out the problem 2 million years ago. Because the little termite high-rises that you see around Zimbabwe, which are about the height of the ceiling, this thick, they contain all the nutrients and food that termites need to eat. And it's a fungi. And this fungi, it has to exist, has to sort of live at this certain temperature, about 36 degrees. But the problem in Zimbabwe is it's really, really hot during the day and it gets really, really cold at night. And what the termites were able to do is figure out a system of opening and closing vents that would regulate temperature and keep it at a consistent temperature of 36 degrees. He used that technology, that 2 million year old technology, and introduced it into his architecture and was able to conceive a building that would be cost efficient for his client. And I think it's just an amazing idea. Another idea, and this one I like in the book, was proves one point: you just don't have to be a creative person to start thinking different ideas when you're possessed with looking for an answer that's important to you. So the story is this 4-year-old kid, he's blind, can't see anything, never saw his mother, doesn't see apple pie, can't see anything. It's really tragic. And his dad wants to communicate with him. And so his dad does this thing that's unbelievable. Only 10% of all blind children in the world get access to this. And dad does it, gets him to learn how to use Braille. Anybody not know what Braille is? I was talking about this the other day. Someone was saying, what's Braille? You don't know? Well, Braille is a language that can help make it. So Braille, so teaching Braille to children like I said, it's a rare thing to, you know, you see, what a lucky kid. He could learn Braille. But the problem is, only 50%, I don't know what the number is, of kids who try to learn Braille actually learn Braille. Because Braille is a language that was written by people who can see. And people who can't see, it's like the formats don't fit. And so there's a rejection. So unfortunately, the little kid couldn't see anything. So what the father did was, again, optimist. I'm going to figure this thing out. And like that illustrator at the beginning, he started looking. He started paying attention to his kid. He was watching his kid one day, and his kid was laughing. And he was playing with Legos. And they have the same surfaces as Braille. So he came up with this idea, and he created this system called text files. Now it's a company. And within 1 month, his little 4-year-old had learned the whole curriculum of Braille for 1 year. And it was just a fantastic story. And he's gone on to create programs for different languages, 4 or 5 different languages, also for music and mathematics. They also have a couple, in this book, you know, there's a couple of things that we believe, just to remind people at Taxi. This is just a thing about, you know, I hate when we do work, and we unfortunately still do work like this, you know, just, I don't know what it is, circumstance, whatever, is we do this work that is sort of in the middle. You know, things in the middle, I hate things in the middle. Things in the middle are boring. It's a very crowded place. What the world wants is the blacks and the whites. They don't want the grays. That's why we never sell to gray. Gray helps one of us. I can't sell you. I don't give you $200 million. You're called gray. I've been saying gray is wrong. Gray, anything in the middle. Stay away from the middle. It's boring. A lot of people there. Everybody's trying to get everybody's attention. Commit to something. Be a journalist. It's either I believe in this or I don't believe this. Black and white. But you know, work that comes through the system sometimes gets diluted. Sacred cows make the best hamburger. This is something that Mark Twain wrote, but it's really letting people, believe it or not, people say, yeah, I'm going to be creative, and then they get in a situation and the client says, well, that's our logo. You can't mess with our logo. We've had our logo for 143 years, and they go, okay, we're not going to do it then. But you can challenge anything. Any convention can be challenged. The more sacred it is, the more exciting the solution can be. So it's just a notion of doing that and giving permission for people to think. This is one of my favorite ones, and I think a lot of people like this, make know your bitch. Because what happens is, again, as I said, if you're going to be really creative and you're going to do some great things in life, you're going to come up against resistance. And resistance is part of the creative process. And I just for not even Taxi, but I had to deal with no in my career because, you know, every time I was showing work, everyone was saying, no, that's not good. Now, maybe it wasn't that good, but I thought it was. At least I had to be right half the time. So I just had to start thinking about, you know, how do we deal with this rejection? How do we deal with no? And I thought, what so we could take that energy, you know, and I think somebody once wrote, you know, you turn no, it turns into on. But, you know, like, it's just, how can you channel this no into something? So I started thinking, there's a couple of principles. It's not a bad word, actually, after all. It's sometimes an alarm. And I'll tell you an example. If this happened to me early on in my career when I was at JWT, my partner and I came up with a campaign that we thought was absolutely, you know, really, well, it was brilliant. And we showed it to our creative director, and he went, that's good. Yeah, that works. Proceed. And we showed it to our client, and he went, hey, you guys delivered. It's on strategy. Shit, that's great. Yeah. Then we went to see the production house. We're going to give them a couple of $1 million, and like, we love it. We'll produce it. It's fantastic. So we said we went off to market, and we put that stuff out. It was crap. Nobody ever paid attention to it. It was the most boring piece of crap I've ever made. And I was like, you know what? Not enough knows. So it's the same. If everybody's agreeing on something, it's not special. You need someone along the chain to take a shit fit. You can't do that. We can't do it. Then you know you got something. No resistance means it's probably been done before. It's secure. People have seen it. So, and you know, the greatest stories have tension. and we're in the storytelling business of sorts. So that was just one thing. So I thought, well, wait a second, maybe No's not, don't freak out when someone says no. Maybe you can learn from something. It could happen. The other thing that No can do, it could actually bring you to another really great place. We do the work for Viagra, for Canada, and we've won, we win like gold mines, it wins everywhere. But when you think of what we have to do with Viagra, it's really a tough assignment. Can we talk about the problem? No, can't talk. It's regulated. It's like it's a prescription drug, so you're not allowed to say anything about it. So you can't say anything about the the problem. So of course we can say what the solution is. No, can't do that. You can't even put there's so many rules and regulations. You can't do this, can't do this, can't do that. Plus, you sell to a company that's called Pfizer that owns Viagra, and of course corporately they don't want to mess up with their shareholders taking fit. So then, oh, by the way, everything that we do, we have to show to doctors, because if they don't buy it, they're not going to prescribe it. So it's just really, and anyway, so what happens is we end up doing amazing work, because what we do is we come up to this area we wouldn't even thought about it. You can't do this, and you can't do this, and you can't do this, and you can't do this. You'll actually find something that's amazing. In fact, I had a little secret. When I used to get a brief, somebody used to give me a brief, I used to make it more complicated. I wouldn't tell anybody that, but I make it more complicated. So it's like you're talking to housewives from, from the Midwest. I'd say without arms. Housewife from the Midwest without arms and bald. And then, I'd make up this crazy thing and target with things, and I would end up at a place that would be more interesting. Of course, we'd put the arms back on, the hair back on, and we'd go in and we'd present. But people would say, how did you come up with that? Well, because we asked the more interesting question. The question, how to sell Jell-O to housewives without arms on, will lead you down a path that you had never thought about. So, when creatives go, well, that's a difficult brief. No, yeah, make it more difficult. Have some fun with it. So that's the thing. The other thing that No can be inspiring. When I started Taxi, I want to tell you about the Viagra thing. When we first came up with this Viagra spot, I was with my wife, and we were in a plane, and we had, it was a couple of years ago, they had the main film going on, and everybody had their earphones on, and and then all of a sudden our Viagra spot came on, and my wife went, and everybody was looking at me, and I was like, and I look at her, she's going, and I look over at the guy beside me, and the guy beside me goes. So it was anyway, that was a funny story, but it's a true story. The other thing that can happen with No is it can be inspiring. When I started Taxi, my boss, the guy I worked for before, said, Taxi, this is really cool. There's 1,000 people working at that agency. He said, Taxi will never work. You're wasting your time. I went, thank you. I actually said, thank you. I'm one. I'm leading a place of 1,000. And are you worried? Anyway, so sometimes when people say no to you, sometimes it can inspire you. So it can inspire you, it can bring you to new places, it can be a silent, think about you might come up with other things. How No can actually help you. Now obviously if you can't, the other thing that we do at Taxi is we help people sell better. I think selling is important. I've seen so many times where people work so hard on their work and they go into their client or whatever and they go, they don't set it up. And I think it's really important that you think about, and there's so many ways you can learn this. At our place, we do bring people in professionally and help them learn how to sell their ideas through. One of the stories I liked was a Canadian guy. His name was Terry Fox, and he had his whole body rejected him, and his doctors told him to stay at home because he was going to die. But he decided to run across the country, and he ran into our hearts. I mean, he ran almost. Our country is a big country, 6 time zone, and he didn't make it. So he died, around 3/4 of the way. And it was a sad story, but he did raise I mean, it's a sad story, but that's how he was going to die anyway. So that was what a noble way to leave with this amazing sustainable idea. So he made 50 or 20 million, but that was like 35 years ago. We're still running. Everybody runs on Terry Fox Day, national holiday in Canada. We keep running.
I ran it in Dubai.
You read it in Dubai?
I ran it in Mexico as well.
10K Dubai. Or it's more actually.
Really?
Yeah.
How cool is that? So that idea is alive, but his parents told him, stay at home, don't do this. Doctors, you can't do this. So he said, I'm doing it. Anyway, one of the cool things about this book is it's not finished. So the challenge for you is, why don't you fill one of these stories? Think about your career, and it'll be some ups, and there'll be some downs. And that's the way life is, and that's the way your careers are. But along the way, go for that extra one. Just if it was just one career-defining thing that you did that actually helped solve some problem. It could be a financial, commercial problem. Also could be a social thing that you feel that you could make a difference in. And that's the most exciting thing that we have as creative people. We can make and affect change. We can do something, add something that comes from our soul, something that comes from ourselves that no one else has, and participate and make and affect change and make this world a better place. Even if it's beautiful computers that help us do things, or little things that help your kids see, whatever. But the thing is, you have that potential, and hopefully you can fulfill this book. That's my story for today. Thank you so much.
On the black and white and not the grey. Malcolm McLaren was a good friend of mine.
Oh, really?
Until he died last year. But he's got a great story. He had a great story which is about that. And so Malcolm McLaren, if you don't know, he actually single-handedly invented punk. He completely invented it. And so when he went to art school, and his art teacher was a very dour kind of English guy, and he told him right from the get-go that none of them were going to be successful. All the great paintings have been done. Don't know what you're bleeding about doing here, but anyway, enjoy yourself. But none of you are going to be up to much because it's been done. And so, what Malcolm decided early in the piece was that if he was going to be a failure, he was going to be a spectacular failure. So he opened a store in London, and it became successful. Well, actually, it only opened for an hour. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it opened for an hour. And it started to get traction with the rock and roll crowd, and it became successful, so he shut it down. Then he opened it up under another thing, and again it became successful, and he shut it down again with Vivian Westwood. And then in his last kind of reincarnation, what it was it was a mud pit. You walked in the front into the door, you fell into a mud pit, and Malcolm was sitting there in a rubber suit under a swivel chair, kind of looking at you, and he paid a lot of money for this. Hollywood stars would come and they'd have this experience, and so they shut it down, and that was the end of it. So then he thought, what do I do? And he got approached by a band, and he said, I heard him. He said, that was so bad. That was so bad. He said, I thought they wanted me to be their manager. He thought, they are so bad, I just have to take these home. That was the Sex Pistols. Okay? So, but the important thing in the story is the spectacular failure. Because, where most people try to be is in that, they're trying to be sort of that semi-success, that kind of bit.
Semi-success.
Semi-success, that bit in the middle, that chair in the middle. And it's death, because what Malcolm decided was, well, I'm either going to be a tremendous failure or a tremendous success. But just by focusing on spectacular failure, he was propelled to tremendous, spectacular success. So it's just that avoiding that middle ground and it's everything you're saying. So
it's really boring. And I'll tell you something. Even if you try something completely different and it fails, it doesn't really achieve anything. It's a great story. I was telling Kraft is now a new big client of ours in the U.S. and in Canada. I was telling him my first ad that I presented was a Kraft ad, and it was just a stupid little ad. And I was so excited. I was like 24, I think 25, 24. And I went up to Kraft, and I was with the senior person who had a lot of other things to do. And then she said, okay, and this is this new junior art director of ours, because I started my career in design. This was a little older, getting into advertising. He says, this is Mr. Lavoie. He's the young art director we'd like to introduce, and he has, by the way, an FSI, a freestanding insert. It wasn't even an ad, it had a coupon in it. And I'm kind of ashamed telling this, but it's a spectacular failure. But we didn't achieve anything. Well, we did sell the ad, but who cares? It was like a coupon ad. But I'm telling you about a boring, banal story because it was interesting. What I did is I got up on the table. I'm 6'3", I was 6'4" because I had hair at the time. And so I stand on the table, like it's like, and I say, I have a big idea for you. I was like, this is the reaction. And here's the reaction of the senior. This is the reaction of the senior. No, I don't have that. Anyway, that's a vault. I don't know why it's there. I look at the.
Where you keep all the money you got.
Yeah. That's not big enough. Anyway, so and I look at the account girl. I remember her name was Jane Williams. I can remember her name. You can remember everything when something is failure. You remember everything. Okay? So these guys were like this, and I looked at her and she was like this. So what happens? You don't know what to do, right? You go, show it. Don't do that shit anymore. Anyway, it wasn't. I never did it again. But spectacular failures. I mean, creating punk rock. That's awesome. But even if it's not, you'll remember these. You'll remember these amazing stories. So try. I mean, if you don't try, you're in the middle. It's boring. Nobody will ever pay attention to your ideas. Your ideas, I've seen them before. Do you have any questions before, or do we have time?
We have time. Question.
Yes, sir.
The gray, black and white conventional stuff. Because when you're telling me this, why shouldn't I doubt you?
Yeah.
Isn't it a convention that I use the tool doubt a lot.
Yeah.
It's very easy for me.
Yeah.
So does this make it a convention I should doubt? And also having in mind that really hitting the right spot in the gray area, like why is it so crowded there? Yeah, because a lot of people feel it, and we are addressing a lot of people.
Yeah.
So should we address them? I mean, this works with surprising and awareness, but if you really want to hit them where they feel, I find it way harder to really hit the right spot in the gray than to get a lot of blacks or whites.
No, but here's an example. But you're right. Congratulations on doubting it. And I'll tell you, you're right in some instances. You should doubt everything. You should even doubt that. So thank you. And good. You're learning. You're learning too fast. You graduate. But let me just say, say there was. What do you do? What do you? Yeah. Copywriter. So, if you were writing something, if you're selling Minute Maid, because I'm seeing it right there. If you're selling Minute Maid and you go. Oh, hey, I'll give you an example. Actually, I used this example once. I got everybody to, you want to do it right now? Everybody have pencils and papers? Mm-hmm. Okay, take a piece of paper out. And one piece of paper and a pencil.
Joe,
Yeah.
piece of paper.
Okay, ready? Everybody got their paper?
What? Oh, I just went to the room.
Okay, you're going to be package designers. We're answering your question, and we haven't forgotten your question. You're all package designers, Okay, and I'm going to invent a company. By the way, we only have 60 seconds to solve this problem, okay? And part of the 60 seconds, I'm going to have to explain the brief. And if you ask questions, that's part of the 60. So you only have 60 seconds. I'm going to try to spit it out as fast as I can, okay? Pay attention. Package designer, that thing that you have in front is the label. It's fresh apple juice, okay? It's fresh apple juice. It's Bob's fresh apple juice, okay? Bob's fresh apple juice. I want a label. It's 100%. There's no crazy bad shit in it. No chemicals, okay? Go. Draw, make me a package. Bob's fresh, 100% pure apple juice. 20 seconds left.
It's not true, it's 33 seconds left.
What's that?
30 seconds left.
15 seconds left. You done? 5 seconds. I'm picking them up. Bob, can you start in the back? We'll pick them up. Okay, over. Thank you. Thank you.
I did it on the back of the page when you were that. Okay, it's fine.
Okay, so let's just take a look at it here. Take a look at, come on up and let's take a look at your work.
Okay, oh, very good.
What do we got here? Got this too. Okay. So, you guys screwed up my game.
We do that.
I'll tell you why, you know, because most of the, well, first of all, you're going to see Bob and you're going to see an apple on it. Okay, so let's get rid of it. Because that's what I'm saying. Where's the guy who asked the question?
Okay,
Oh, yeah. What's your name? Lawrence. Lawrence. So basically what I usually get, but you guys are a little bit more creative, is I get Bob and an apple on it. That's all I get. And if everybody has, if you're walking in the shopping, mart, and you see 30 Bob's apples, and then you see there's Bob.
Here we go.
There's Bob, and there's an apple. Bob's fresh apple juice. What the hell is that? This has got a little advertising. Shiny, yeah! This is just the package. They're going to get back to us later with the answer. Bob's apple juice. This kind of fucked up a bit. This is really good. Bob's. Apples. Lots of apples. What's this?
It's an apple sticker, but it does say Bob's.
Fresh, that's good. That's Bob's fresh apple juice. Nothing else, so a little advertising.
Here,
there.
there's one.
Yep.
Oh, that's a seed.
Yep. That's a seed. So, I got this garbage over here. You don't. I actually like it. Oh yeah, but it's actually good. I love it.
But there's nothing. Yes, this is.
Wow! That's awesome. Okay, we'll put that over here. That's the apple core. This is still garbage. Anyway. Oh. It doesn't take no for a But Mike, the thing is, you know, that we just did this in 30 seconds, but basically everybody does this. Now you guys are doing a little really cool things. I mean, I've never ever seen three-dimensional answers in 20 seconds, so that's like you guys are really on drugs. That's great. Plus, I love the shiny, yeah. You know? But I'm just saying is, if everything is like this, maybe somewhere in here it'll catch your attention. Because most people are going to do gray. Do you know what I mean? If you have 14,000 gray dots and then one green one, you're going to look at the green one. Because everybody's thinking of the gray. That's what we're trying to say. Here's where you're right, though. When there was the financial crisis in New York, we had a client, and we really did kind of boring work, gray work. Perfect. Nobody wanted cowboys. Everybody's afraid of their money. And that's where you're right. We didn't try to win awards at Cannes. We said, you know what? They just need to reassure people. And that's where you're at. You should challenge, right? So you're right. Anything can be challenged. But that was my point I was trying to make.
Yeah.
There you go.
Very good. Thank you, Paul.
Still looking around for ideas. I'm going to keep these. I can use
Well,
one like
That's it. And do you have any other questions?
Any other questions? Or what are you doing now? Apart from spreading the theory of doubt.
Yeah, well, I'm not really spreading it. Like I said, this is just myself. Bob asked me to talk about how we started Taxi, and I thought what would be interesting is what Taxi stands for and what we try to keep it. So I have, my job title is, I'm not doing creative at the agency. So my job title, which I wrote, is Open Doors, Open Minds. So open doors means, yeah, things like this. Maybe someone will say here, I'd love to work at this agency, Taxi, in Amsterdam or New York, and that's a good thing, because it's recruitment. It's not just about getting new clients. I was speaking, did a seminar Monday, and I came off the seminar, and clients said, we really like to talk to you. So that's the opening doors part. The opening minds part is to just remind our whole company to think about higher standards. I'm now in the process of injecting some more change to just shape things up. And then basically, you know, the future, and for me, I've been doing short films. Last year, I finished judging Titanium and went up to north of Paris and shot a short film, a four-day shoot. I've directed before when we didn't have any money to hire people, but I love the directing thing. So I'm working on another short film, and then I was going to do a feature. And this film was about the last 2 days in the life of the Dutch post-impressionist artist Vincent van Gogh. When he was shot or shot himself, he didn't die right away. He lingered for 2 days, and when I found that out, I thought, what the fuck happened with him for 2 days? You know, he was on drugs, he was afraid. My film, it's a 10-minute film, is about those last 2 days. And Taxi, well, you know, Taxi is going to change. What's not going to change is our standards and the things that we believe in, but everything else will change. People will come, people will go, clients will come, clients will go. Mediums, new things will be invented, old things that we rejected will come back. Things will always move. The best story about where I want to go in the future, it was when I was 10 years old. It was in the 60s. It was the late 60s, and my father had a Buick Roadmaster. It was a 1956 Buick Roadmaster, and he was selling it. And two hippies came by to see it. Like this is the 60s. These were real hippies. One guy had like really like long blonde hair, and he was like smoking a cigarette. I didn't know it was a cigarette. And he was just smoking a cigarette. He didn't talk much. And then the other guy was this white dude. He had this fucking afro. It was like bigger than the moon, you know. And I mean, I was this high, and I looked at his afro, and I was closer to the hubcaps, like the mags, and the mags were smaller than his head, because his head was like massive, and he was like, you know, the guy was like, and my father, this French guy, said, you know, this is a good car, it works, beautiful, but it doesn't have a reverse. The car basically didn't have a reverse. But everything is good. It's $300, take it or leave it. That's the thing. And I always remember looking at the guy with the afro. He looked at my dad. He went, "It's okay, Pops. We're going to California when he comes back." This is a true story. I didn't make this up. And that's where we're going. We're going to somewhere. When I was 10, I knew where the fuck California was. I wanted to go. I wanted to come back for supper because I was 10. But that's where that feeling of going somewhere, not sure, it's a little shaky, and I hope that still has that effect on Taxi. WPP bought a company, but it didn't buy a culture, and like I said, the day that leaves, then we're all leaving. We're going to join Bob in Nashville.
I don't know if you're finished. I have another
Yes.
You were talking about the importance of that, about the importance of asking questions all the time. How do you know when to stop? How do you know that I have already, because at the end of the day you have to come up with something, so you have to stop. and then bring something to
What's
the
your
table.
name?
Sergio.
So where are you from?
From Spain, but I live in Paris.
Oh, you live in Paris. Cool. That's a great question. That was a really good question. Thank you so much for asking that question. And the question, if you didn't hear in the back, is great. Doubt is awesome, but you know, at one point you gotta do something. You gotta make something. You know, and that's true. There is a point where you stop. And the way I like to look at it is it's like this amazing. If I could just draw it. Does anybody have a? Yeah. They come up with a couple of ideas, and then they make it. And that's a small idea. Okay. A big idea is basically, okay, let's doubt, go into here, why gray, good question, you know, let's do three, you know, like just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And all that says is you're opening up the options. But at one point you gotta come down, you have to make some decisions. You do have to make some decisions, and that can be, I will make a decision. I love people who make decisions quick. Or your client says, I need it by Friday. You'll know that you'll have to figure out what your schedule is. But you can try to stretch your imagination, stretch your questions, do things to shake things up. Don't work with a writer, work with an architect, do something different, shake it up. But when you come down to this one point, it's sharp. It's the question. This is what we're trying to solve. This is where we're going to go. And if it's a really big idea, this is what happens. So it's like, so start stretching as much at the beginning. Play, have fun, trip, and you're really getting to some really interesting territory. And then you'll pick some cool things. Then you come down to a point. But what happens, I love this X because what happens is that it takes off and it explodes into the thing. So it's basically not a small idea, but for instance, like we do, we want it for, you know, our social marketing thing, our packaging, whatever. We don't want a matching luggage set of design and campaign. But we want ideas that spread over different mediums and spread over time. But at one point, you just have to stop. I had a problem with that at Taxi at the beginning when I realized people were getting too long, so I had to bring everybody in the room and said, okay, enough. You know, like start doing some shit. You know, I had the Mac artist going, turning. Well, let me look at another one. You know, it's like, go on and on and on. So at one point, you're right. It's a really good question, and you just have to be disciplined to know when to stop and say, and you know when you feel you have a good idea. And why not have a choice of, like I'm saying, 100 ideas over through. I got 3 ideas. If you're in the idea business, you should have 100 ideas.
No, it's, when he asked the question, the first thing came to my mind, and I just want to put it out and maybe you validate it or not. I would say that when you find a basic human truth,
yeah,
that would be one way of also stop doubting and just, okay, it's basic, it's human, it's in the most core level, and it's most likely it's gonna work. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, what makes a good idea? It's a really difficult question to answer, but definitely the work that you see that you like here, the work that you've done, it makes you feel something, right? And it makes you feel something. It makes you feel something. There's something human about it. There's an insight in there that touches you, that goes a little deeper than the surface. An idea that's just style, it's like Bauhaus content, form and function. There's something functional about human insight that works. How you express it is important too. You can have a great idea and express it in the most banal way. But you're right, that's probably a characteristic of a great idea. It touches you on a human level. We're good? Thank you so much. Have fun.